So let's get started demo first of multi-container Docker container. So here actually I have created one application which is .NET 8 Web API along with database which is a SQL Server database. So that SQL Server also is a create a container, and this Web API also is a create a container, and both are interacted to each other, right? So that's actually we have to implement, and let's see first see how it's working. Now I actually create this API. There is a CUD operation, complete CUD operation, which is interact with our SQL Server, which is host in our container. So if I try to get execute, so I'm trying to actually I'm getting the result from that container, SQL Server container. And also if I trying to push the data or just create a new data, that also properly created. And if I want to get this data also, I'm trying to get over here, for example ID number 4. So you can see he is there. And if I want to see the complete data, how many data is over there, you are able to see the data is there, right? So here actually that complete operation it's happening for using this API along with the multiple container. And also you can see if you go to the Docker desktop, you are able to see this is a two container. Let me zoom in for you. So this is a one container for my SQL Server, and this is another container for our web API. So those are actually status is running, and once is running, so once I add any request I send to our database, so this container will actually get the data and populate the data. Everything will do inside the Docker container. So let's get start implementation. So before implementation, I'm especially recommend what you need to do first. First you have to visit my channel, right? It is a .NET real world example, and you have to go to this section. If I zoom in, you have core migration automatically with the CURD operation, and this will help actually to create migrations in Docker container as well. So that's why I will take this example, and this example also we have complete the session using the how we can use that .NET Core Web API CURD operation along with EF Core, right? So that's why taking this example. And so moving back to our sample, so this is same sample. If you want, you can take it from my GitHub link repository, which are already available on that description. So first of all, I'll show you like how is this sample is what is the sample and how is that working. So if you run this application, similar whatever we see that demo session, right? So that will you are able to see same things over here, but only difference is this is connecting our SQL server in our locally, and but we will implement that one is in our as a container will run on the container in inside the Docker. So see the same example. If you try to get, so this is getting our data, and this data actually you are getting from that your local DB, right? But yeah, that we have to create a container. So let me close everything first. Also let me remove Docker container which we are creating in previously, so that I can show you from the scratch. So delete everything, delete the web API, also delete that. So I delete everything, only I keep it to image of SQL Server image. Why I keep it in little bit later. First what you have to do, just take same example, and in this example actually I have to change a little bit over here. So go to that startup.cs file. Here actually we use that migration, right? EF core automatic migration, so that we have to change little bit. Why I have to change? Because see, I just actually researched some things on this, whatever EF core migration we have done in last time, right? Which is automatically migrate. So that few packages actually not work in our Linux system. So that's why this approach will not go for this Docker container things, right? So that's why what I need to do, simply this section, just comment that section, right? Because this is the main section, and here I just implement little bit different approach. So what I need to do, simply first I just try catch, right? And in this try catch block, what I need to do, call this guy db context, and db context have a database, and in the database ensure or just migrate, right? I can use this inbuilt function, and also just use that ensure, right? So that whatever before migration, ensure our DB has been created or not. And this just create a exception, store the exception, and here we can write a log. So how we can write a log if any exception while migration, so we can capture over here. This is a simple way using that service dot get required service. Here I can just inject, here we can call our ilogger interface, and here we can just call our program.cs file, which is we are referring over here, right? And then just simply change it to logger, right? And here logger dot log, right? It is a error log, right? So let me put some message over here with the interpolation. So this is my interpolation here, like for example migration issue occur, and let me bind it to ex dot message. That's it. These changes you have to do with this code, right? And that's it for here. And now we have to start moving to implement our uh, docker multiple docker container, right? So there's a concept actually compose, docker compose. So that will help to actually create a multiple docker container, because if you see this is API, and this is a one image will create for this API, but there is a another things over here which is interacted with the database, right? So if we have to doing that interactivity with this API, so definitely we have to create another container, and that container also will run that SQL Server or any whatever database, so that you have to write. So in this approach we have to record docker compose, and we have to create one docker compose file as well. So how we can do that, don't worry about that, that is not complex, because that is a very simple uh, things over here which will helps to Visual Studio to write that everything automatically. So what I need to do, right click on that, add, go to this option, container orchestration and support, click that, and see here they will give that option docker compose and docker orchestration, right? And if you click OK, and it is selecting the target, so I will use the target, that Linux, right? And OK, and once you click OK, you are able to see it will create a new project, right, which is a docker compose. And this docker compose have 2 3 files they have added automatically. And as well as you are observing over here, the file, the project, actually whatever our API project, they are including the docker file automatically, right? So this few things actually they automatically over here, like this is that one, and also docker file. And what is that overall? It is just simple. If you go to our docker compose project, it is simple, nothing, it is just ignoring file. So I'm also ignoring this one. And if you go to uh, this docker compose YAML file, now see, it is whatever doing, it is just creating a services, right? And whatever the version and service, and in this service whatever your API, right? So the API actually create a service, this is a service name, and this is the image name they will create it once you run. And also they will just build using that whatever root folder, and it will create your root folder docker file, and it will create an image and just assign to container, right? So that mechanism actually they're doing. And similar things we have to do for that, our we have to create actually another service which will running in our SQL Server, right? So similar, this is a API, and this will interact our SQL Server, so that things we have to create another service. So let me create that first, right? So what I need to do first, let me create over here. Before that API service I have to create over here. So first of all I'll just create a name over here, that service name. So I'll just put it as just MySQL container, right? And then after that we require one image. So that image actually helps to create that SQL Server instance, right? So this is that image. So if you using SQL Server, so this is that image. If you want to MySQL, so that would be a different image you can get from that other Docker official website. But don't worry about that. That I will create another session for that in upcoming series. But yeah, here I will use that SQL Server, and also we'll put that some name, like what is that container name. So I'll just put that container name is that this guy, right? So let me formatting properly, right? And this is done. Now container image container name also I specify this is a container image name or image name or container name. And then we have to provide one network, right? So that network I'll just give you that one for a little bit later, but yeah, first complete before uh, everything, right? So also we have to create one environment. So let me create one environment for that SQL Server. So let me create that environment. So this is one environment, and inside this environment what I need to do, I have to add to property, right? So what is those property? Now see, this is those property. Okay, let me formatting properly. And now see, this is that property. Let me fix that. Okay, so this is also fixed. Now see, in environment what you need to set, you have to set accept this one, like it is a agreement of that license, right? So we have to set a y, and then whatever password, right, whatever SQL password you have to set, you have to set to over here. There's a other mechanism I will cover in upcoming session, but yeah, this is a not a good approach to write directly pass that password inside this file, right? We have to use that placeholder and we can use that, but yeah, that we'll do in upcoming session. So that is done. Once it's done, what I need to do, I also set some port, right? So let me go to new line and add one port section, and in this port section I have to specify some port. So what is that port? Actually, which this container in our SQL Server instance it will running in this port, and this is a default actually container port 1433, so that we can use it. But yeah, whatever port you want, you can just change it over here. So this is a setting you can say in this Docker Compose file you can do for this SQL Server container, so that we have to do that, right? There's some error, I think. Yeah, the formatting is not properly, because it should be like before that. Yeah, this is that image, right? And if you formatting everything, yeah, this is container name, and then this guy, and also we can use this guy. Let me fix this too. Yeah, now see, formatting is very important to Docker Compose file. So this is a proper formatting, right? And this is done. And also we have to modify over here. Okay, so before modifying, actually what I need to do, we have to create one network actually. So what is that network? So if I run this container and this container, so I want to run the same network, right? So there is a one mechanism in this Docker container network, so that we have to, if there's a many type of network, but I will use the default one. The default one, how we can create this is simple, like this way. You can just create a network, and over here you can just pass whatever that is. This is a default network, you can just pass it any name. So this will call a default network. Yeah, but is our requirement, if required any other network, so we can use that. And this network, what I will do, I have to use that as a here all both container. Like first I will use for that SQL container. So go back to here, and this is that one, and then the name of that network is this guy, right? This is demo network, which we'll just use over here. So same thing, you can just same things you have to do for that this container as well. So use this guy, and little bit modification required in this API one. So what are these? So there's a missing that container name. So that container name also I can suggest over here. For example, I can use that container name like that, right? So container name I can use that this, and rest of things also fine. And also this API we have to run in some ports, right? So that ports also we can define. So let me add then port section also after that image, right? It is not important like sequence, but yeah, we can keep it like this sequence. So yeah, I can just use that port, and after that port what I will do, I can use that this should be run, this SQL Server run 8002 and our API should run 8001, right? So and this is a default port. So this is done. And one last thing actually we have to specify, like, see, this is API, right? This API is totally dependent on our database, right? So that also we have to mention, like, okay, what is the dependent on that, right? So we can use that one of the dependent things over here, the dependent on, and which service actually dependent. So this is and actually dependent, this service actually dependent, right? So we can use this service as a copy, and let me quickly paste it over here, like, see, now see, it's done. Like our Docker Compose actually ready to use. And one little modification I have to do. For example, you see, there is a one file docker compose yaml, but if you go down, so there's another file like docker compose override file. So here actually they are trying to use the default http port is this, and https port actually this, right? So these things actually also we can modify, because as of now, if I try to run in our docker, so they will not work actually, because this is not a default port, our http, right? So what I need to do, simply, our http is running for 80, so I can use this 80, and this is https, but yeah, I can leave it as of now. Yeah, in upcoming session we can remove that, because uh, if I use this https in our web API, definitely we have to use some certificate and all. So it is very difficult to actually create a certificate and all for local purpose. So that's why we can remove that in upcoming session, but as of now just keep it is. And one more thing actually you have to change in a docker file, go to the docker file in our web API project. Here also just expose these two things, right? So I can just expose 80 only, right? And this can as a keep it same. So now it's done, completely done. So there's a two way actually you can run this. So see, once your docker compose is running, right, is actually creating, so also it is creating a launch setting. So this launch setting actually prepare everything and run your local using the Visual Studio. But yeah, there's another way, directly command prompt you can just run over there. So first I'll show you from the command prompt, and then I'll show you with this directly Visual Studio, right? So go, let me first build so that we can make sure everything is perfectly working. Now see, build is succeed. Go to the Docker desktop. See, it is automatically something actually trying to build. So let me remove everything first. So there's a should not any container. See, there's a no container, right? So once I run, so container should be created, image will be created first, and then container will run. And also if we remove that all image, let me remove all the image first. So yeah, I'll just keep it this SQL Server image, because it will take some time actually to download. See, it is almost taking uh, 1.58 GB, right? So that will take some time, so that's why I'm ignoring this image. But yeah, uh, if you first time running in this flow, definitely it will take some time to download this image, and hardly, I think, based on the your network. So yeah, everything is clean, right? So what I need to do, go back to your project and right click on that and open any file explorer, right? And this is your file explorer. Go to command prompt, right? So see, this is a command prompt, And in this command prompt, just mention your project location, right? So this is my project location, and in this project location you can see whatever the folders and files over here. See, I have that docker compose yaml file, right? So this is a root directory of this location, so that we need. So once you have this location, what you need to do, simply docker compose, and it should be docker compose up, right? And then detach, attach and detach. So I'll just use the detach, and once you start run, so now see, it will start to pulling that images, right? Whatever API image and whatever SQL Server images, they will pull and download, and then it will create a container and running that those images inside this container. So you have to wait few seconds, and we can see meanwhile here, right? So see, as of now we don't have an image, but once it's done, so image will be created over here. See, now it's running, right? This two container is running and started. And if you just docker ps command, you just put this command, so this two container is running, right? So one is container, see, this port is running on this, right? And the another container is running 8022, right? This two container is running. If you go back to your docker, so this is our API, right? This is API image, and this is SQL Server image. And if you go to container, this two container is running, and there's a one issue actually. See, this API container, it's not running, right? Because see, it is running state, this is perfectly running, there's a no issue. But yeah, that API one is some issue, but yeah, we'll figuring out actually what is the issue. So if you go back to inside this API container, so it will clearly saying some issue over here. See, migration issue on that, this, right? So this is known issue, I know that. That's why I haven't fixed that, because you have to know that actually what will be the issue if you directly only change on that. So go back to actually see, it is the issue with the connectivity, right? So my container, SQL Server container is running perfectly, there is a no issue. If you want to connect this SQL Server, right? So I can show you, right? So how we can connect over there, open any SQL Server instance, right? Over here, try to connect the database, and whatever your content, so if you go back to here, so this is that content, and it is running an 80002, right? So what you need to do, simply localhost, you just like see, this is your server name actually for localhost, and then whatever port you can just specify, and then you have to add some password, right? So what would be my password? So my password would be, if you go back to your docker compose file, so this is my password, right? So if you copy this guy and go back to here and just paste it to connect, now see, it is connecting. And once you refresh, as of now there is a no database, but yeah, it is perfectly connecting. And it is whatever default database over there, those are this over there, right? This database. And now uh, let me fix that issue. So what is the issue is simply we have not actually set that connection string properly, so that's why it is not able to try to connect. So where I have to connect, try to fix that. So see, if you go to our app setting, so now our app setting have the SQL Server DB connection, right? And in this SQL Server DB connection, there is a simply this is a old connection which is try to connect in our local, so that we have to change to connect uh, our docker container, right? So how we can set that connection? So that connection should be like that. For example, first I have to use the, let me remove that first, like, so that you can understand. This is a very important part actually, so you have to understand clearly over here. So how we can connect? Simply you have to add that server. And what would be the server name? Server name would be your container, service container name, right? So if you go back to your uh, docker compose file, so see, this is your service name, right? So this is should be your server name. So add this server name over here, right? And then what you need to do, you have to mention your database. So what would be your database? So you can just add whatever database you want, so you can add it. So as of now I will use that database, for example this guy, like blockdb demo, right? And then we have to specify the user id. So what would be my user id? My user id would be sa. So this is a default credentials, like user id should be sa. So you can add this sa. And then what would be your password? So password I already shown you, right? Password is my this guy. This is my password which we have set. Whatever password you want to set, you can set it over here. That will be fine. And then two additional information you have to set, like okay, it should be a trusted server and all. So that we have to just set it over here. That is a default setting. So trusted server certificate is true and multiple result set is true. That is fine. Actually this is a optional, you can keep it or you can leave it, that is fine. But yeah, for me actually we require this, so that's why I set it. So let me save it. And if you go back to program.cs file or that startup here, and yeah, that would be fine. Yeah, one more thing actually we have to do that. Let me copy this guy and inside this try block, because once everything is done then it should be migrate, right? So yeah, that's fine. So everything looks good. So once complete this setting, what you have to do, go back to your docker container, right? So first of all I have to remove this, right? So there's a two way. Directly you can just delete over here for the container, and there is another way actually you can remove from here, like for example docker compose and down, up for running and down for down, right? So once you run down, so see this three containers should be down, and if you go back to your docker desktop it should be removed. And also one more thing we have to remove for that images, right? So whatever api images, that also I have to remove, because they should have to create again, like whatever changes we have done, right? So based on this we have to create that image and then they have to start your application. So that's why we have to remove that image as well. So what I need to do, again go back to here and simply start docker compose up running. So again it will create an image for that web api. Now this time also is started, and let me see it is properly working or not. Now see this time is running, and if you click that api container, now see this time it is, this is important actually how we can figuring out if any issue. So this time it is perfectly running, right? And also db migration has started. See table actually created, table created. And if you go back to here, and also migration table is created, and there is just some issue over there while inserting, after inserting. And here what is the issue? See, the issue is block db blocks column does not allow null, right? And which is that null? Like see, I have an entity which is image url entity property, which we set it over here, which is we decided it should not null, but we trying to inserting some data, so that expecting actually some value, right? So that's why actually it's creating a problem. So let me show you what is the problem. It is a simple our API problem which will show in last time. So if you go to the your entity, go to that blocks table. Now see, this time I just last time we just add for migration perspective using that image URL, right? But see it is a not nullable. But in our seed data, if you see that our seed data, so go back to your data and seed data, so it is trying to inserting, right? So while trying to inserting, they we are specify only three property, and that property also it's a should not nullable, right? So that's why they are creating a problem. So what I need to do, simply there's a two way to fix. Actually you can do that. Simply you can add that property value over here while seed data, like initial data. And or other way is like just keep it to this guy as a empty, right, or just a nullable field. And once it's done, so again do the same things, right? Let me just down, that means remove that container first, and also remove that image, so that again they can create whatever changes we have done, they can create properly. And now again just fire this docker compose up, start. Now this time I hopefully should be fine, right? So our container is running perfectly started. And go back to your docker desktop. Here our image is also created. Go to the container. Here also that container has been created, and again it's have some issue. Go to that web API. Now this time see, there's another issue. This is, it is saying uh, trusted certificate actually. So this is the issue of HTTPS. So ideally we can use that .NET certificate, dev certificate, right, to fix that issue. But yeah, I'll just ignore that issue as of now. What I will do, simply uh, delete that, right, and delete the whole things, a whole container, and go back to image and delete again. And I'll just remove for that HTTP settings for my API. So in this case what I need to do, simply this is the redirect things, right? So let me remove this guy from here, HTTP redirects. And also we'll remove this HTTP configuration from my here, right? So let me remove that. Also remove this guy, and also should remove in our docker files. So this is sufficient for that remove HTTPS configuration in our APIs. So uh, let me check, like, okay, so let me remove that first. Again images, so before images first we remove that container and remove that images. Now let me run one more time. Let me clear first and run. Now it's running. Go back to your container, and this is image created. Go to the container. Container is running this time. Go click on that container, and this time see, you are able to see it's perfectly running your development environment, right? And also you are able to see everything is proper migrated automatically. There is a no issue, right? Create a demos table, create a our block table with this nullable field whatever we set, right? And also they create a some migration and all table, everything they have to create it, right? So that we can make sure, if you go to that your SQL Server Management Studio, just refresh, right? If you refresh, if you click over here, now see, this time go to the tables section, and you are able to see whatever tables we have to create it, they automatically migrated and created, right? So let me just quickly see how many data is over there. Like for example, select star from blogs, right? And this blocks, it should be initially 3 data which we have to seed the data, right? See, this is the seed data, and that is perfectly fine. Now run our application. And where is our application is running, let me figuring out, right? For example, docker ps. If you docker ps, so it is saying clearly this port, right, 5807, it is running. And yeah, this port is running. And also we mentioned that 801, right? So let me check out which port actually running. So open here and go to this, and then localhost swagger. Now see, our is running 8011 actually, which we have to specify over here, right? If you go back to your docker compose file, go to the docker compose file. Where is docker compose file? This is my docker compose file. Here we mentioned, right, our API should be run in this port. So whatever this port, just you can use it over here, localhost, right? And localhost, and then whatever port, and then you can use swagger. So you are able to see over here. If you don't want to use swagger, so that's also perfectly fine. Like for example, our API blogs, because I just specify over here, see, it is returning also whatever data actually they are returning. So like this way actually you can check it. And let me make sure it is properly connected, right? So this is connected, and if I try to insert some data, that should be inserted. For example, uh, docker compose, right? Docker compose, and this is also multiple docker container with web API plus SQL Server, and then author name would be KKP, and image URL my URL, my image URL, right? Yeah, that's fine. Once I create executed, we have to check, okay, that is properly created or not. Now see, this is properly created. That means it is inserted in our container, SQL Server container, and that also we can make sure, like, see, this is properly connected, right? So this is connected, localhost 802, it is container, and once I execute, now this time you are able to see whatever data you are just adding. And also those command also you can check over here in your web API container. uh, like for example, see, you just inserted their data, like this is your data inserted, and also you're trying to get it. So whatever you are trying to do, you can also track and log in our container site, right? So like that, you can create your multiple container, right, with using your Visual Studio. And oh yeah, one more thing actually, so that's also I are running using that direct docker compose command. But yeah, I'll show you how we can run that directly inside the Visual Studio, that is provide this launch setting, right? So also this is providing docker compose setting, right? So it is simple. What you need to do, simply again, I'll just remove all the container and remove that images, and here simply you can just click on that docker compose settings. It will be create automatically, they will actually create the image, and they will running that image inside the container, they will figuring out automatically. So see, it is trying to create the image and it's running. And there's a one more section here. If you go to that Visual Studio view, go to that other window, here is that go to that view, go to that view, and go to that other windows, and here that container section, right? If you click the container, so whatever container, if you do you have multiple containers, so see, this is a SQL container, and whatever the information you can see over here, like for example, whatever password and all you are just set it, so this container actually set it your password and all. And this is label ports, and yeah, that label I will talk in later, yeah, because in upcoming session it's, I'll just create it how can persist the data inside this docker container, right? So that is an important part, so that I will create a upcoming session, but yeah, leave it that part. Yeah, also see, port is running, doc container port is 1443, but yeah, our port, host port is this, right? And whatever files and alls you can see, check over here, right? And same things you can check your web API container as well, like this two port is running, your API is running in these two ports, so you can check it over here like this way. Also just make sure your application is running properly, right? So let me check over here, execute. Now see, it is perfectly running, right? If you try to insert, also it should be inserted. So let me insert it. And if you go back to your container docker desktop, also it is running your container with the multiple in this inside the docker, right? So that's all. We have learned many things actually it's this session, like how we can create a multiple container, how we can create a compose file, how we can connect SQL Server container using that SQL Server Management Studio, that also we have learned, right? So many things actually we have learned. In upcoming session, we'll learn more about this multiple container, because see, as of now, I have just created one API, which is the depend database, right? But yeah, I'll just create front end as well, is the Blazor application or MVC application, which will talk with our API, and then API talk with this here. So there could be more container, right? So that also will create in upcoming session. So That's all for this session. Yeah, before closing this session, what I will do, simply I will just add this repository, right? This is our one repository, right? So I'll just add in our GitHub link so that you can just use and you can learn over there. So let me add that in our GitHub. So would be the name of web API checkout, or you can use it for the learning perspective. So let me create and push. So now it's done, right? So that's all for this session. Thank you, have a nice day, and don't forget to subscribe, like and share.